My name is Juda Gabaie. I'm an attorney, a tax attorney. I specialize in tax law. I am the managing member of Gabaie Tax Law. I work and I represent individuals and small businesses and multinational companies before the IRS and the state tax agencies. I deal with a lot of small businesses that run into tax problems every day. As a small business owner, you have to be aware that there are numerous amount of taxes that you have to file, pay, either daily, weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, quarterly. I run into a lot of small business owners that initially are not aware of what they need to file and how to file it, and that's very important to always reach out and seek a tax professional in order to avoid any future consequences that may occur if you miss out on any filings or any payments. The IRS and the state are very strict about making sure that businesses are in compliance with taxes. One thing that I run into mostly with small business owners is that payroll tax. Payroll tax is a major issue that a small business owners have to either do on their own or outsource it. The reason being that you're withholding taxes from your employees, and it's more like a trust fund, and you agree to hold on to it and then send it to the IRS, whether weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, or quarterly. I have run into a lot of small businesses that fail to properly send this money to the IRS or file the forms. They can have severe consequences. You can be subject to civil and criminal liability if it continues for a numerous amount of time. I represent right now many small business owners that have not paid their payroll taxes in quite some time just because cash flow was running low. That's not a good thing because the IRS will come after the individual members. It's very important also to understand how the business is structured, because they can also come after people that sign checks, or if they are on a bank signature card. So one of my biggest advice to small business owners is that make sure that payroll tax is paid before any other invoices, or else you can face severe consequences by the IRS or the state tax agencies. So different types of business taxes, and one that's overlooked plenty of times is estimated taxes. Even though you own your own business and you're a corporation or you're an LLC, you are required to make estimated taxes. That's usually quarterly that needs to be made. And if you do not make those payments quarterly on time, then you can be subject to penalties. And interest. So, and the problem with it's not, the penalties and interest is not something that bothers me the most. What bothers me the most is that small businesses will tend to push it off, and before they know it, it snowballs into a huge amount, and they're like, "How am I going to pay this? What am I going to do? This is a huge liability," and that's where I run into penalties and interest. That's something that we'll take a look at and see if you qualify, if we can get some of the penalties reduced and removed. But when it comes to a big balance, you have to discuss about how we're going to resolve that. And it's very important that the small business owners don't incur any tax liability, or else that could be one of the first things that could put them out of the business. Other common things, depending on what type of business you are, is sales and use tax. Sales and use tax is if you're selling, whatever you're selling in your business, you may be subject to sales and use tax. So that's another form that you have to file. There's so much compliance that a small business owner needs to go to that it's just so burdened. I mean, if you think about it, a small business owner not only has this estimated taxes, right? That's estimated taxes in the business, maybe self-employment taxes, then they have payroll tax, and then they have sales and use tax, then they have personal property tax, depending on what state you live in. So there's so much taxes, there's so much out there that you have to be accounted for, or else one of them could really hurt you if you default on it. So seeking a tax professional is very important. Can't stress it enough. Tax strategies. There's various tax strategies that a small business owner can do. It really depends how your business is structured. Now with the new tax reform, Tax Job Act, there's a lot that makes a big difference, and A lot of small business owners should definitely reach out to tax professionals because there's a lot. There's one example is you can get 20% income reduced depending how you're structured. Also, it all depends also on if you have any employees, and there's a certain amount, and there's exclusion. Doesn't apply to everyone. For example, it doesn't apply to lawyers or services, but there's a cap for lawyers and doctors. But for other construction companies or other companies out there, there's no cap. So it's definitely something that a small business owner should reach out or should ask their accountant, or if they have an attorney, to find out more information, because that could save them thousands of dollars. Small business owners are trying to do a lot of the stuff themselves in order to keep the money in house. They don't want to be sending the money out. So that's something that's very advisable to definitely, in the beginning, try to do some sort of tax strategy. There's a lot that can be done. I mean, putting money away in a SEP IRA, there's a lot. Definitely reach out to a professional. A SEP IRA is basically like an IRA. It's an individual retirement account. As a small business, or if you have an LLC, or however you're structured, there could be the possibility where you can put away a good chunk of money into an individual retirement account. There's limitation on how much you can do. So I would definitely I would definitely reach out to your tax professional to determine what that amount can be, and that can definitely save you thousands of dollars in taxes. That's for sure. Generally, CPAs should have some basic knowledge of these taxes. Tax attorneys do have the knowledge in this area. Even your regular attorney a business attorney may have the necessary experience. I would definitely ask them if that's something that they can help with, and if not, if they have a recommendation. So that's something that I would definitely look into. So when they're looking at a payroll company, they should definitely ask them, are you going to file a 941s for us? And if so, how are you going to file it? Is it going to be electronic? Is it going to be paper? Will you be taking the money out of our account? Or we have to write a check as the business owner? So those are very important questions that should be asked. So the moment you have a tax problem, whether it's a tax debt, or you're being audited by the IRS or the state, or if you fall into an employment tax issue where you haven't paid employment taxes in quite some time, then the first thing that I would do is reach out to a professional, whether you a tax attorney or a CPA. See where they can help you and how you can move forward in that area. If this is something that you feel capable that you're able to do, then you're more than welcome to represent yourself. But I highly advise against doing it, as there are strategies sometimes in reducing your debt, depending on how much you owe, what your current income is, what your expenses are. There's a lot that needs to be looked at. But one thing is for sure, do not prolong your tax problem, because the longer you wait, the much more difficult it gets, and the harder and more expensive it gets for a professional to help you get out of it. You wait longer, you're going to pay more to a professional to help you to get out of it. Never push it off, because the IRS and the states have a tremendous amount of power to collect money. I mean, the IRS doesn't need to get some sort of judgment or anything. They can just go straight for a levy or garnishment when you have a tax liability. All they need to do is provide you a notice, file a notice of intent to seize or levy, and they can go straight for garnishing your wages, garnishing your bank accounts, and levying or putting liens on properties. On the professional side, what we do for them is, when a client would come into my office and let's say they are running into some sort of tax problem, the first thing we want to do is take a look and see what is the issue. Have they filed their taxes? Are they in compliance? How is their business moving forward? Is the business doing well or is not doing well? We'll have them complete a financial. For me, that financial will tell me, what the revenue is, what the expenses are, what's the financial capability of this business moving forward. That's going to really determine of how we represent your case before the IRS and the state. So that's one thing that we'll take a look at. In some cases, that's not the issue. The issue is a client comes into my office because they're being audited by the state or the IRS for, they want to make sure that all income is reported. Or in the case of the state, they want to make sure that these are actual employees or they are 1099s. I tend to represent a lot of businesses that misclassify their employees. So that's a big issue, and the states want to be able to collect their money on unemployment insurance. So that's something that we look at, and we will help our small businesses, basically defending them before the state and the IRS. The difference between an employee and a 1099. An employee is a W-2 employee. Basically, that's where an employer has control over the employee. They set the time, they set the hours, they tell them where to work, they tell them what to do, where, and all that. The difference, a W-2 comes with a lot of reporting information. You have to take into consideration that you have to file 940, 941s, and that's just for the IRS, and then you have to file the state. Depending on where you live, you have to file reporting requirements for the state because you're withholding taxes for them. And then you have to file unemployment for the state. There's a lot of stuff that needs to be filed. So a lot of employers don't want to get into that, and they rather classify their employees or independent or however you want to call them, independent contractor. And an independent contractor, what an independent contractor is someone that the employer does not necessarily have control over him. That means they're more than, they can all they have to do is do the job. There's no restriction on when they have to do it, what time they have to do it, and that's something where a lot of employers would prefer to classify an employee as an independent contractor when in fact they should probably be an employee. And the states have their own case laws about this, especially in the state of Maryland. Is the state will look at it and they will try to make sure that it's really an independent contractor. And I've represented many misclassified employers, and the state has their own guidelines of who's considered an independent contractor. Do they have their own insurance to independent contractor? Do they do solely business for that one person, or they do for multiple people? How is their business structured? Are they going out as their own name, or are they going out as a business name? Like, for example, I have an ongoing case right now, an audit. The audit was initiated initially by the IRS, asked the state to look into this 1099s independent contractors because there's so many of them, and they wanted to make sure that they're not being misclassified. And this employer has photographers that go out and take pictures and does certain different contracts, and the state wants to make sure that these are really independent contractors. Show us their insurance cards, show us their name, show us their business cards, show us their website, show us if they're doing businesses with other people. That's important because the state wants to determine whether they're really independent contractors or W-2 employees. Interns it's a great question because there's a lot of case law around it. It's not set in stone, but I have found that it all depends also, just like independent W-2 and independent contractor. I mean, you got to take a look and see what sort of restrictions are you applying to them. Is this something that should be classified like a W-2 or a 1099? I mean, that's something that is just like a regular employee that you have to take a look at. Unfortunately, it's an employee that's only going to be there for a number of months, and that's why employers do not want to classify them as W-2, but number of months does not necessarily mean anything. Sometimes it may be best just not to pay the intern and just have a free intern, but that comes with its own rules too. That could have its own troubles later on. As a small business owner, taxes are everything. This will determine how the business will run. I mean, small business owners, one of the first things they need to do is take a look at the taxes, make sure that they have the right taxes in places, or else it could really put them out of business. There's so much compliance that one has to look at. It gets pretty frustrating for a small business owner. and definitely seek out a professional, tax professional, to help you with that. Focus on your business. I always tell this to my client, focus on your business, because that's what you're good at. And try to reach out to a tax professional, whether a CPA or a tax attorney, and have them do what they are best at too. Don't try to do everything and cut corners, and then it might come and bite you hard later on because you try to cut corners. Let the professionals do what they're good at, and you continue working on your business. That's what I always tell my clients. You continue your business. You hiring my office to help you with your tax problems, and that's what we'll do.